Bonjour à tous, bienvenue aux journalistes présents et aux...
Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome the journalists and those who are watching through web streaming. We're holding this press conference to celebrate the launching of the European network of anti-fascist parliamentarians, and I'll give the floor now to the chair of the European United Left, Gabi Zimmer. Thank you very much. On behalf of the GUI NGL, I would like to warmly welcome you, and I'd like to declare that the group of the European United Left and the Northern Green Link in the European Parliament has picked up this issue of a European anti-fascist manifesto after an initiative that we saw in the Greek Parliament in order to deal with the combating of fascism and in order to put that issue on the agenda. Here we think it's not just a question of a selective Greek problem dealing with the Golden Dawn and actually prosecuting the crimes that have been committed against individuals in Greece by Golden Dawn, but also we're dealing with increasing appearance of phenomena in Greece, Europe and the European Union, re-emergence of phenomena which show that more and more groups from the extreme right are now acting in an openly fascistic manner in member states of the European Union. So therefore it's necessary to work together to build up a broad alliance at the European level in order to present resistance. So we want to get through to people in Europe, in our member states, and we want to ensure that this movement is called into question, and we want to see a reversal of this trend. We agreed that there's been an increase in the number of acute events, but there has been a lot of criticism of the way in which EU and the member states have dealt with the crisis, and it seems as if the solution of the crisis has been to the detriment of those who are socially weaker and suffer from poverty already, and that is our reproach as well against the governing powers. They are ready to play the egotistic national card. They're ready in order to achieve their goals in combating the crisis. They're ready to just pursue their own competitiveness goals, and that is to the detriment of the weakest. Those who are weak are made even weaker, and those who are the weakest, like the migrants, they're being turned against. There's popular movements against those who look different, who think differently. And so we've seen a growing acuteness of these phenomena in member states. And I'd like to remind you about conflicts in Hungary. I could remind you on conflicts that have taken place or opposition and against the Roma people in member states, and in particular Eastern European member states. And we are convinced that here we need a broad alliance. We need to forge a broad alliance in order to show that we reject this sort of politics. And to wind up, before I give the floor to my colleague in the group, Nikos Huntis, that I want to make it clear that the attempts that we see time and again, the attempts by extreme right-wing groups and the supporters of radical right-wing groups, well, this attempt to sort of amalgamate these two things, and it looks also as if fascist acts over the last months and years have been underestimated in various member states. There hasn't been proper detection and investigation of fascist abuse. Some of these things have been swept under the carpet, and representatives of state authorities have become blind in their right eye. And I'll just remind you how long it took until the public, until public institutions and representatives of the police and the judiciary and investigative bodies actually woke up and understood that, for example, in Germany, with this National Socialist underground, there was obviously a clear bringing together of public fascist forces who didn't hesitate to kill people if those people didn't fit into their vision of humanity. And so this isn't just a Greek development, but obviously with a view to Greece, what's happening in Greece does raise a lot of concern and a lot of worry. And so we want the developments there to stop. We don't want the people to be threatened or to fear for their lives. We need to see exemplary action being taken. We don't want people to be expressing their frustration through taking out that frustration on the weak and the vulnerable in society. No, everyone has a right to live in dignity, and that is a right that has to be recognised for all people living and residing in the European Union, independently of wherever irrespective of where they come from in Europe. So these are rights for all, irrespective of whether they are European citizens. Thank you.
I'll speak in Greek, and I'd like to thank you very much for being here for this press conference, being here for this event. The intent here is to present the European Anti-Fascist Manifesto, and also to present the European network of anti-fascist parliamentarians. It is an initiative, this particular front, if you like, is an initiative of great importance. There are a number of different aspects of it which have been underlined by Comrade Gabi. Now, I simply want to underline the importance of the fact that we're organizing this event here today. Next to me is the president of the European United Left Nordic Green Left group. I am from the Syriza party in Greece. To my right is Annette Gross, if I've pronounced her name correctly, from the Die Linke party in Germany. And to my left, with gender balance, is Dimitris Tsoukalas, who is a member of the Greek parliament from the Syriza party. So we are all parliamentarians from national parliaments and from the European Parliament, and we're here today to say that this particular initiative that's been embraced in a number of different countries, embraced by a number of different social agencies, movements, coalitions, it has to be supported. It is our obligation to gather together, to garner this support, to present all of this to the European Parliament. That's going to be done by Dimitris and by Annette, and to state here clearly and openly that parliamentarians, aware of the fact that the problem is of a European nature, that European support has to exist, and that efforts have to be made by the individual members of Parliament at the European level as well, by members of the European Parliament. So the composition of this particular panel, those of us taking the floor, we want to underline this, emphasize this, that it is a European, a pan-European problem, the growth of the left, the emergence of neo-Nazism and of fascism in Europe concerns the entire continent, basically. It's not by chance that we're here representing Greece and Germany. Germany, for the quite obvious reasons, because still alive is that effort to not forget those crimes of fascism, of Nazism of the past, to move forward for a democratic Europe. And we're here from Greece because things have taken that particular turn, unfortunately. We have an explosive increase in fascism in Greece, expressed through the Golden Dawn, which has moved forward, which has even performed criminal acts as well, violent acts, and has come to the forefront now and is at the focus of everybody's attention right now. In other words, quite clear is to everybody the existence of and the activities of this fascist organization in Greece, this criminal organization. What I would like to emphasize, before giving the floor to Dimitris and to Annette to go through the particular ideas and concepts enshrined in this particular manifesto, this document, is that unfortunately, major efforts have to be made for us to be able to confront this re-emergence of the far right and of fascism. And an effort has to be made because, aside from all the obvious reasons, it has to be understood that this is a result of the crisis which has struck severely the countries of the South and Greece, of course, and also through the various austerity policies that have been adopted, situation has been exacerbated. It has created misery, unemployment, a sense of no direction, fear. It also brings that quest, that desire to find some form of support from somewhere, and it is just that particular desire where people are trying to find something to cling to that the fascists have taken advantage of in order to get the support of people. It's through that they've achieved popular support. And because the risk, the danger, has been very well described by many people, the issue is not simply describing it, but seeing what you're going to do about it. Unfortunately, this particular teratomorphic political form now is present in the Greek Parliament. It will be present in the European Parliament in the future. So we representatives of the European Parliament and of Europe, we have to do whatever we can to deter this particular situation. We have to make an effort, a concerted effort in this direction. There's no other way. The issue is for them not to come here, to not be represented here, to not express themselves, to not take advantage of the crisis. But the crisis and that struggle to survive and that struggle to fight against fascism all has to be incorporated into this broader concept, because we do not want them to have a representation here. We do not want the results of the European elections to be such that they end up coming here. So at this point, I'll give the floor to Dimitris Tsoukalas from the Syriza party in Greece, national parliamentarian, and he'll describe to us this particular initiative, the content of this initiative, and more specifically of this anti-fascist manifesto. Thank you.
Okay. Even if I can't speak in Greek, I'm going to speak in English, as my intervention is already written in English, because I didn't know there's going to be a translation. Before I start my intervention, I want to say something, and after, of course, the two very important interventions of Gabi and Nikos, why we are only from Greece and Germany. Of course, there are many, and later we can speak and say that there are many people from Great Britain, from Spain, from Slovenia. There are many in the list that are going to participate. Of course, there are some, as you know, obstacles, and the distance is an obstacle. So I'm going to continue to say how we are going to overcome all these obstacles. But now, as we are Greeks and Germans, and of course Germany has passed all these things that has passed with the Nazis, Greece, and this is the paradox, is the first country that started fighting the Nazis. During the occupation and during the Greek occupation, etc., as you know. And this, of course, it's a paradox that now, today, we have so big Nazi movement in Greece, and of course, the explanation is out of what Nico said before and Gabi said before about European development of fascists and Nazis in Europe. So I'm going to say, and I'm going to focus a little bit of what manifesto says, and later, of course, we can also, Gabi is going to add on that and speak more, if she wants, about how we're going to organize the whole thing. So, first of all, the European Anti-Fascist Manifesto wants to sound the alarm, the emergency against the deadly threat represented by the impetuous rise of far-right racist and the neo-fascist forces throughout Europe. Because we have now to admit it, this threat is actually direct and immediate. It does not concern anymore just one country, as for example my country Greece, but all of us. Who could dare say today that we are not witnessing in Europe the comeback and the resurrection of the worst nightmares of the 30s. The aim of the European Anti-Fascist Manifesto is clear. Unite anti-fascist forces, that is trade unions, social movements, political parties, and most of all citizens, in order to build, as soon as possible, a powerful, unitary European anti-fascist movement. That is why we do not want to substitute already existing anti-fascist movements or networks of any kind. We do not want to divide, we want to unite, because it is more true than ever that united we stand, divided we fall. Only united beyond national frontiers, we could take initiatives such as the organization of the European Congress of Anti-Fascist Intellectuals, for example, writers and artists, or the European networking of football anti-fascist and supporters clubs. This European anti-fascist movement has to be the heir of the great anti-fascist traditions in our continent, has to build the bridges with the precious anti-fascist past that is now almost forgotten. It is no accident that our manifesto ends with the phrase, "This time history must not be repeated." Yes, we have to learn from history in order not to repeat the errors of the 20s and 30s that led to the worst tragedies of human history, to Auschwitz, to Birkenau, to Treblinka, to a world war with its 60 million of dead people. If this European anti-fascist movement wants to fight successfully the neo-fascist threat, it has to invest and to organize its forces in the long run, to reject any sectarianism, as well as to combat far-right in all fields of human activities, without any exemption. And the only way to do that is to trust common people, to encourage their networking where they live and work, study and develop their capacities. Why? Because nobody else than common people can translate generic anti-fascism in concrete demands, programs, and most of all, to anti-fascist actions. That is why the European Network of Anti-Fascist Parliamentarians we are launching today offers a first concrete example of this kind of anti-fascist networking we are proposing to all European citizens who want to resist effectively the terrible far-right and neo-fascist threat. Our anti-fascist resistance has to be democratically conducted by the popular masses themselves. Dear friends and comrades, we have to admit that more difficult days are coming and that we are now engaged in a race against neo-fascism and the racist barbarism. We have to organize and act now and not tomorrow, because tomorrow could be too late. However, we are confident that what we are doing is the right thing. As said the German theologian and martyr of the anti-Nazi resistance, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the only fight which is lost is that which we give up.
Merci beaucoup. Avant de donner la parole à...
Thank you very much. Before I give the floor to Annette, I'd like to warn you that Gabi Zimmer has to leave straight away because she has to open our conference on the Kurds, so she'd like to speak quickly before going. Thank you very much, Gianfranco. Just a very brief comment, because I think this is an issue I'd like to raise before my colleague Annette Gord from the Federal Parliament takes the floor. It's important that we're talking here about the parliamentary network. We have a lot of European, national and transnational networks that are combating fascism, but so far, when it comes to parliamentary representation, we don't have such a European parliamentary network. After the next elections, in 2014, we'll see possibly more openly fascistic parties becoming members of the European Parliament, or becoming groups in the European Parliament. this is a possibility. We should be aware of that, and we know that this is going to have a big impact on the way in which we, as MEPs in the European Parliament, but also as MPs in national parliaments, cooperate with each other, so that the emergence of these fascist groups is going to have a big impact. And we know already that within the European Parliament, a lot are preparing for the arrival of more far-right political groupings here. And people seem to think that they can avoid the problem or get round it in order to, by influencing rules, so that members of such far-right parties or would be excluded from certain parliamentary procedures or kept on the margins. And in order to make that possible, these parliamentary bodies are also trying to keep the left out of these parliamentary procedures, out of normal parliamentary business. And so there seems to be this a tendency to equate those who belong to far-right and openly fascist groups with those people who are working on the far left. And then that's something that we have to work against. We have to go onto the offensive. We have to put these people into the dock and say nobody can eschew their political responsibility to deal with the consequences, social and legal consequences of having these far-right members in the parliament, people who don't respect others, who don't respect their rights or their lives. You can't just get around the problems created by these far-right groups but by fiddling with the rules in the European Parliament. So it's important that we get together. It's important that we create such a network and extend it. And we need to think about having a founding congress, a constituent congress, and we could perhaps try to get more people involved, get more people to participate. But we need to ensure that this is an issue that we raise very energetically, very dynamically during the European parliamentary elections, and then in the European Parliament, and then after elections in other countries where we assume that there again openly fascist groups will be entering national parliaments. And well, we've got to be ready and forearmed to deal with the conflicts that will arise. We shouldn't be told that we're going to be swept into the corner and that we should keep quiet, shut our mouths, because otherwise we'll just be strengthening the hands of the far right members of Parliament. I'm sorry, because at 3:00 I have to open another conference, but I wish this entire initiative all the best, and I'd like to thank our Greek friends who really are dealing with this issue now and putting it onto the agenda because of their own painful experiences. And now I'll give the floor to Annette Gorter. Thank you. I'm going to carry on in German. Why am I here? Well, I'm also a member of the Council of Europe. In the last 4 years, I was the chairman of the German-Greek parliamentary group in the federal parliament in Germany. At the moment, we're not working, but I'm still acting chair, and I hope that I will keep the chair of this fascinating parliamentary group. I have been dealing with this issue for a very long time. It's been a concern to me, and what I see with a great deal of worry is that the right-wing parties and the fascist parties at European and international level are very well linked, very well networked. They network much better than the left, and I wonder why. Historically, they've always been more connected. I was very shocked about 2 weeks ago because the Hungarian Golden Dawn was created. So after the founding of the Golden Dawn in Greece, Greek assistance was then given to the Hungarians. Yet another Nazi party has been created in Hungary, although there are already two far-right groups in Hungary. And so things are carrying on, and I agree very much with the previous speaker that this is something we've got to be ready to deal with, and we've got to be prepared for there being a big political group of this type in the European Parliament in the future. And I think we must do all within our power in order to prevent that. Now, I will never, I'll never forget the Fidesz that is the conservative right-wing Hungarian party, which is also represented with members in the EPP, along with Mrs. Merkel and her colleagues, and Fidesz this year compared the Roma to animals. And nobody protested in Europe. I raised this in a plenary session of the Council of Europe. I said that I was surprised that there was no outcry. And I think that such a party should no longer be part of the EPP. And I wrote a letter to Mrs. Merkel at that point, but I didn't get an answer. So therefore, I'm very happy about this Greek initiative, and I got involved in that pretty quickly. And I hope very much that we'll get this network going, get it up and running, and I'll do what I can as well to get other countries that are in the Council of Europe and not in the European Parliament, that they can be brought on board as well, so that we can increase our fight. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Annette.
Thank you very much, Annette. I think we've got two or three minutes left, so if there are any questions from the floor, this will be the time to ask them.
S'il n'y a pas de questions, je vous en prie.
You have the floor.
Ja, ich habe eine Frage an
I just one question for the Greek colleague. The danger and the risk of these movements is not just linked to the fact that these members are evil, but also they get because of the support they get from other right-wing groups. So they're dangerous not just because of themselves, but because I've heard that the Golden Dawn is getting big support. Some from parts of the Greek police forces and certain parties supported by big capital in Greece. So how things are developing now? Because I know that there is attempts being made to try to ban such a movement.
Yes, this is a very good question. Can I speak in Greek?
Yes.
No. No.
Yes, you have
Okay.
translation.
All right. Θα ήθελα να μιλήσω στα ελληνικά τώρα.
I'll switch over to Greek. That is a very good question indeed. Because it's known that the Golden Dawn, as concerns national elections now, indeed there was great support in certain sectors or branches of the Hellenic police. In other words, not the entire police force. I wouldn't say that they're with the Golden Dawn, but there are, if you like, little enclaves or little groups of police that are oriented in that direction. And this can be explained in numerous different ways. One explanation might be that, the police themselves are in terrible economic and financial conditions. They find themselves in a very difficult situation because of the austerity measures, and they've been hit down themselves. And also because the police are used as some form of law enforcement or repression against any sort of demonstrations or acts of people who are expressing themselves against the austerity, people react negatively towards the police. And in a way, this has sort of pushed the police into the arms of the Golden Dawn. And the Golden Dawn basically goes out and supports anything that the police does in its law enforcement or in its repressive acts against people who are expressing themselves against the austerity. Perhaps that's part of it. We've begun an information campaign for all people and also for the police, so that people can understand, so that the police can understand as well, that the Golden Dawn is nothing more than a political party of the system, of the establishment. That's what it is. And if there are entrepreneurs, businessmen, if there are those people who support the Golden Dawn, simply they do exist. And the Golden Dawn is not only a political party, it is also a kind of underground enterprise, an enterprise of the night, if you like. They work with blackmail. They work as kind of bar bouncers or bodyguards and things of that sort. They're a kind of enterprise, if you like, which also do enforcement, or a type of enforcement in the sense of law enforcement, if you like. So another thing is that link between entrepreneurs and the Golden Dawn. This is very interesting. For example, when pieces of legislation are up for a vote in the parliament, in the Greek parliament, pieces of legislation which do indeed support major enterprises, undertakings, ship owners, banks, and so on and so forth, on these major pieces of legislation which serve the banking sector and the ship owners, the Golden Dawn always votes with the government in favor of bankers, in favor of ship owners, and so on and so forth. Although they have expressed themselves to the public, they present themselves as some sort of anti-establishment party. So I think how they vote really does show that they are part of the system. And they cannot say that they're against austerity or that they're for the people. As time passes, people understand that. And, of course, we're trying to help people understand exactly what the character of the Golden Dawn is. And I'd like to add on to that, indeed, the Golden Dawn, looking at its criminal activities, it has targeted, and it does target right now, working people, trade union people, homosexuals, Roma, immigrants. These are the victims. These are their targets. So an indication that they are part of the system, part of the establishment, is that, indeed, that they hit down or they go lash out against these particular groups that the government as well lashes out at. But they also present themselves as somebody who has, or as a party with a counter-argument. One would say, has it grown because of the crisis? And people will say, well, crises exist in other countries as well. Portugal, Spain, and so on and so forth. And they don't have a Golden Dawn phenomena. Or other countries which have no crisis whatsoever, like Austria and so on and so forth. Why do we have these types of political formations in those types of countries? So the issue is, or the explanation as to why these types of phenomena appear, well, there are common points between the different countries, and there are idiosyncrasies as well. So I think this is something very important for us to really designate carefully, because in our manifesto, because if we're to have a pan-European movement, a European network against fascism, we have to look at these little idiosyncrasies, these differences that exist between the different countries. Now, when we look at 1900, how fascism developed then in different countries in Europe, using fascism to suppress movements of the proletariat, workers' movements, or movements of farmers, and so on and so forth. So I think there is indeed something that we can learn from history as well, the way that things developed during the 1900s. Let's not forget that they lash out at, and their targets are immigrants, homosexuals, workers, and so on and so forth. Let's not forget that. So I think, indeed, with all of this, the Parliament has a responsibility. This movement is a unifying movement. There are other efforts which have been made, which have the same target and same aim. We have nothing against any other movements that have been formed, but we would like for them to come under a single umbrella, so that our effort is one of cooperation, of collaboration, so it's a concerted effort, so that we have greater weight and greater power in doing our work. Thank you.
Now, we've already gone beyond the time allocated for this first conference. I'd like to thank the speakers and the interpreters. Thank you very much.